My name is Melanie Robson, and this is one of the regular live streams I do as part of Women's Health and Wellbeing Services, and us kind of venturing a little or a lot more out there into the online space, particularly with the advent of COVID and the pandemic and stuff like that. And of course, that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about today. This is a live stream, so any and all interaction is welcome. Last week I was very lucky to have a couple of good interactions, a couple of participants who were chatting on the topic I covered last week, which was about grief and loss in children and how to support children through that. So today I'm going to be talking about something a bit different than that. And of course you're welcome to jump in, but this video will be available to watch later on our Facebook page, and also via our website as well. So today I'm going to be talking about who cares for the carers, and in particular the mothers and the women who have been holding and caring for everyone post-pandemic or during the pandemic. And this I think is such a common occurrence, I'm going to say mainly among women, or if you are the predominant caregiver in your family. And when a crisis strikes, or when there is a heavy demand on that family, and whether that is a pandemic, something we completely didn't expect, and we've all had to scramble around that, or whether it is some other kind of really unusual but very significant life event that just kind of strikes you out of the blue, and suddenly you've got to be looking after even more the people that you already were looking after and taking care of. So by that I mean children, or maybe you take care of your parents, or someone in your family who has a disability. You might also have, you're in a relationship, you're managing a job, you're managing the house, you've got pets, you've got commitments, hobbies. Heaven forbid you should actually have your own hobbies. Wow. And often I think we fall into this role, or we've taken on this role. If you become a mother, then naturally you are caring for little people, and they become bigger people and bigger people. And we may well want that to be caring for the people that we love around us. And sometimes though we find that we suddenly feel like we're kind of caring for everyone and not caring for ourselves. We have talked about that before. Janet, our health promotion officer, has also done a video and some live streams on that. She's very big, as we all are here at Women's Health and Wellbeing Services, very big on self-care and not just bubble baths and chocolate, kind of version of self-care, but real, genuine looking after yourself and prioritizing your needs. Because remember, you just cannot take care of anyone else if you are so depleted or burnt out that you have nothing left to give. You may well be familiar with that feeling. And let me tell you, that doesn't lead to good places. If that continues on over time, you may get burnt out. You may have a collapse or a breakdown. You may get very sick or frequently ill. You may just lose your joy in life and for living. You may start to feel really resentful, really angry. You may struggle with putting up boundaries. You may feel like you're just compulsively saying yes to everyone when you really want to say no. And eventually everything just kind of collapses somehow, which is a worst case outcome. And of course, never your intention. Like, we would never intend to feel that bad that we fall in a heap or we just drop everything. Okay, so I really wanted to talk today about that sort of phenomena and how that has been really exacerbated and brought to a head as a result of this pandemic. So for many families, when the pandemic hit, and I'm focusing mainly on Western Australia, and we're based in Perth, in Gosnells in Perth, in Western Australia, and for us now, a lot of the restrictions have greatly eased, which is fantastic. So we're kind of all going back to normal. The kids are back to school. You might be going back to work physically, like in the office, like where I am now. I'm back in the office. Some days I'm still at home. We can go to playgrounds now. Nightclubs just open on the weekend. Hey, mate, you might want to go out and party again, that kind of thing. You can eat at restaurants. You can do all that kind of cool stuff. And that's good. We've kind of come out of the worst of it. But during that time, the demands on you as the main caregiver might have been like tenfold. So, if you have kids, suddenly you're homeschooling them. If you're working, if you were still lucky enough to have a job, maybe that went online or you were able to work from home, which is great in theory. And I do think that's actually a really great positive that's come out of this, to show that people are more than capable of working from home. Having that flexibility is really important to many people, and that trust and respect to be able to manage your own workload and have that kind of flexibility, and see that we can adapt the workforce around that. So you suddenly you've got your kids at home, you might be working at home, your partner might suddenly now be working at home. If everyone's at home, there's probably going to be more housework to do, because everyone's at home creating mess in the kitchen, in the house, all these kinds of things. There might be more housework, more washing, more cleaning. The shopping, that might have gone haywire, with all the craziness that went on in the supermarket. Suddenly it was like, I can't online shop anymore. I have to physically go there, but the stocks are really low and I have to kind of figure out when to go, what I can buy, how I'm going to manage that. Maybe too, you've also got aging parents or people in your family, extended family, that you've been sort of just looking out for and taking care of. And then, wham, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and suddenly, you've got to really take care of them even more in terms of shopping or keeping them safe and healthy. If they've had to be isolated at home because they're vulnerable, their immune systems are vulnerable, then who's going to visit them? Who's going to make sure that they're mentally okay and physically okay, and that their needs are supported as well? And that might be you. That might have been you holding all of that, juggling all these balls even more than you were juggling before. So that's a lot to hold. I think it's fantastic that we have so much freedom and choice for any gender and any person in, certainly in Australia, in our society. We're very lucky, very grateful for that. However, it's not without its problems in how do we sort through that, and how do we make sure we have balance in our lives. And if we're multitasking till the cows come home, you're possibly not doing a great job with any of those things that you're trying to juggle. And you might have learned a bit of a harsh lesson through the pandemic if you've been home with the kids, with the partner, juggling all these kinds of stuff now, in terms of, well, how much energy and time can I devote to all things, to every area of my life and all the people that I love and I'm taking care of. And I think many women now would have found that, I'm saying women, I'm making an assumption, but of course you don't have to be female. Maybe you've been in a role like this and it doesn't matter what your gender is, of course. The point is, suddenly you might be wearing way more hats than you originally thought you had. Mother, partner, worker, chef, now you're a teacher. You're even more of a cleaner than you were before. Maybe you had a cleaner, maybe you had that luxury and then they couldn't come and clean. And suddenly you're like, oh, that support that I needed, that's gone from me. So now I have to up the ante and I have to organize that. Or you might have just gone, you know what, I'm just going to have to let some things slide. And I really hope you were able to do that a little bit throughout the pandemic, because trying to hold on to everything, trying to juggle all that, just not possible. And I've certainly read oodles of stories, and I've spoken to women as well who've said, I thought, great, I'm going to do this homeschooling thing, how hard can it be, kind of thing. And within 2 days, they're like, you know what, just watch a bit of YouTube and I'm just going to go over here and fall apart for, just give me 5 minutes kind of thing. And you've really just had to let go of a lot of the stuff that you thought, perhaps overly ambitiously, that you could do. And also, I think, we were fed a bit of that as what happens, I suppose, with the internet and stuff like that, oh, everyone's stuck at home. Now it's your chance to learn a language or, to study a new skill, to like, what? Seriously? Like, I am busier than ever, and trying to navigate and negotiate a crazy new world. And that world might be suddenly confined to four walls, just your house kind of thing. Very limited expeditions out of the house beyond the basic kind of needs of groceries, pharmacy, kids not being able to go to playgrounds. Everyone had to stay home, so you had to take care of everyone, entertain everyone, or eventually just go, look, you need to take care of yourselves, to a degree. So I wonder if that has happened for you, that the load has been particularly heavy, more heavier than it's ever been. And when we kind of go through an experience like this, I know it's very new for all of us. I've never in my lifetime gone through anything like this. I imagine for most of you out there as well, it'd be the same. But you might have had other experiences, like I said before, where suddenly there's been this life event or crisis or very significant situation where you've suddenly had to get it together really quickly, and organise and take care of everyone. Maybe you've had a death in the family or some other major life event, and you being the primary kind of caregiver or the main kind of parent, if we're talking about kids, and there's a highly emotional event or state kind of going on in the house or in the family, and inside you might be crying and so stressed and distraught and confused and all these things, but on the outside you're just trying to keep it together because you need to keep it together for the kids, or for anyone else in your life that you're supporting. And so we do this, and really that's an adaptive thing. We have to be able to keep going. I suppose in kind of ancient times or in tribal kind of times and stuff like that, when a crisis kind of unfolded, we can't just kind of ditch the kids or ditch whatever we were doing just to kind of survive ourselves. Obviously that's a pretty selfish thing to do. So it's built into us in how we grow the babies ourselves. We love these little things, and we're like, we often, well, your life matters more than mine kind of thing. We need to think about that. That's a very heavy kind of topic, but remember that analogy of if you're in an aeroplane and it's going down, they say put that mask on your face first before you put it even on your children, because if you're not alive, how are they going to stay alive? And so that's really the premise of this talk today. Self-survival, looking after yourself, honouring the load that you've been under for the last few weeks, few months. And we still don't know really when that's going to end, even though things have shifted and changed a bit and eased off. It's still a lot. Juggling all those balls in the air. So what does that mean for you? I'd be really curious if anyone is watching this now and would like to jump on. How have you managed that in terms of just getting it together and getting through on a day-to-day basis? I think when a crisis strikes, it's kind of a way to cope as well and to get through it. We just get really practical, right? I've got kids, or I've got a job, or I've got my partner, I've got my parents to look after. I still have to get up every day. I still have to make the breakfast. I still have to get them dressed and get them to school. I still have to do X, Y, Z, right? And it's like kind of your brain goes into this automatic mode to just get through it. But you can't hold that all the time. And maybe you found that once things have died down, suddenly you feel like just falling apart, or feeling really exhausted, like beyond normal level of exhaustion and fatigue. And you might be feeling really fed up or really surprised at how suddenly emotionally you feel like you're kind of a wreck, or physically you're getting sick a lot, or just that kind of crazy level of fatigue which you hadn't ever really experienced before. And they're all signs really that it's time. It was probably time back then, but it's time now to take stock and to start breathing again. Maybe you've felt like you've been holding your breath for months at a time, and now things are rolling back out into how they kind of were, you're like, whoa, man, can I just take a breath here? It's like coming up for air and finding that actually there's not much left of you. You might just be feeling so shattered, or like a shell of who you were a few months ago. Maybe a few months ago you were barely hanging on, and then this stuff happened and you're like, oh my God, and you might have found that you've been reaching for some unhelpful tools and strategies or behaviors or habits that you probably don't want to slide into on a permanent basis, and I'm talking about maybe you started smoking again, drinking a little bit too much wine or bourbon or whatever you like to drink, eating a little bit too much, not going for your exercise, and on that note of exercise, too, if you've been going to the gym, or you had sort of regular activity that you used to do, whether physical or social activities, and all of that stopped as well. So not only have you maybe been juggling more load in the house, you haven't had the supports and the social connections in your life during that time that would normally bolster you. Maybe you've been lucky and you've been able to find some online connections, or really kept up texting and phoning people, or doing Zoom meetings or catch-ups or anything like that. Maybe you haven't though, and so that's kind of been cut off as well. It's like your oxygen supply perhaps has been cut off during this pandemic, as it has, I think, for many people, whatever that kind of oxygen supply is, whether that's friends or for kids. Maybe just going to school because that's kind of fun for me, or social. Even if I find school boring kind of thing, it's still my regular life, and I need that to feel good. I need that to feel connected. And that's what it comes down to, connection. Not just connection with other people, but connection with ourselves. First and foremost, we have to connect to ourselves and remember us in this mix, in this crazy kind of time. And so here we are, sort of on the other side, like I've said, sort of going back to normal. And are you kind of raising your head now out of the water and going, you know what, I actually feel like I'm drowning now? Maybe before you kind of felt, I want to drown, but I've got to keep it together because I've got to look after everyone else. Maybe now everyone else is taking care of themselves and things are kind of going back to normal, and you're like, wait, I really am drowning now. Very significant feeling to be going through. And how are you supporting yourself through that? What are you doing now to take care of yourself? So I actually wanted to use a bit of a concept from Circle Security Parenting. We run those courses here, best courses ever for many things, but Circle Security is just brilliant parenting program that we run. You don't have to be a parent directly. You could be an aunt or an uncle, grandparent, caregiver. You don't even have to be a parent. It's totally applicable to any relationship in your life. It's really handy if you want to explore some of your own experiences of being a parent. Maybe you're preparing to be a parent. Anyway, in Circle Security Parenting, they talk about the hands, okay, on the circle. And the hands represent safe base, safe haven and secure base. We all need a secure person that we attach to, psychologically speaking, and we need a safe haven to come back to when we need to come back to someone and we need support. Things haven't gone well, or we're just a bit tired, so we need equally as good hands that we can feel like we can launch ourselves out there into the world and go out and explore and stuff like that. But we also need to feel like there's a base there that we can come back to. So that would be the primary caregiver, the parents there. But with those hands, there also needs to be hands holding hands. So who is supporting those parents as they support their children? And that would be community groups, other families, other parents, the wider society. So there's always hands holding hands. There's always support there on a far deeper, broader level. So I'm asking you if you have that in your life. If so, are you reaching out now? Are you finally going, whoa, like, whoa, like I need to go and get my own help now. I need to go and reconnect with my friends, or maybe I'm really not coping and I need to go see my GP, or I need to come and have some counselling. Of course, we do counselling here, because now that things are loosening up, it might just be all coming out. And you need to acknowledge that and validate that and then honour that and then do something with that. So what are you doing in that? Do you allow yourself to fall apart? I think for many of us, we don't allow that. It's too risky. It's too scary. Or it just feels so much. It just feels overwhelming. And we feel like we're bursting. Like holding a ball underwater. One of those beach balls that you blow up full of air. And if you've ever been swimming in the ocean or the pool or something like that, and you might have pushed it under the water or tried to lay on it or something to keep it under the water, there's a lot of pressure building up. And of course, when you let go of that ball, it shoots right up. And maybe that's what you've been trying to do. Hold it all down, hold it all together, and thinking, I can't fall apart now. I feel like I'm going to fall apart. And if I undo that, what's going to explode out of me? You need, though, to let that valve open. So even if that's a little bit at a time, so that you're not exploding everywhere or falling apart everywhere, do it. Do a little tiny bit of at a time. Because where is that feeling going to go? You cannot hold that down. That is taking even more of your energy. If you're already dividing up your time and your energy to everyone else in your life and saying yes to everything, and I have to do all this stuff because frankly, right now we don't have a choice. But eventually things change and things stop and they end, and then you're left even with more pressure under there. And you have to gently and slowly release that pressure. Allow yourself to fall apart a little bit. That's okay, Make sure you've got a place that you can do that, a space, a person, something, someone who can hold you in a healthy way to let you breathe now and let you reconnect to yourself if you've really lost yourself along the way. Are you afraid to do that though? I think for many of us we are. But the more we avoid that and the more we try to shove it away, the bigger that grows and the bigger that fear grows. We're just giving it more energy when really it just needs to come out. It needs to be heard and seen and acknowledged, especially acknowledged at how big these events have been for many of us in our lives as we've been trying to hold everyone around us. Maybe you have some scary ideas in your head about what that would look like if you did release that pressure valve, or if you're thinking, I'm just going to fall apart, I can't do that, I've got to keep it together, I've got to keep going, I've got to look after everyone else, maybe that's not realistic. Maybe you're getting swept up in some pretty kind of catastrophic thoughts, which is really normal and really common, especially when we're very depleted and we don't have enough energy and time for ourselves. We can kind of get a little warped in our thinking. I know I can do that anyway, a little irrational, especially if we're exhausted and we're sleep deprived and we're stressed and we're not able to really observe our thinking or step back and kind of see the craziness that's kind of going on in our head. We're kind of so swept up in it and swept along with it that we hold it all together still. I hope that video was kept going then as I was talking. It looked like there was a little interruption there, but that's okay. So what does this mean? What does all this stuff mean if you're now kind of coming out the other end and you do feel like you're falling apart? Who is holding you as you've been holding others? You need to get back to prioritizing yourself. And I don't just mean that. I'm not just talking lip service around that of like, oh yeah, self-care, whatever, take care of myself. How do I do that? When do I do that in my day? It's completely chockers, And if it's really, really, really chockers, I challenge you to think about doing something different, to change that. Really seriously sit down and go, you know what, I'm so overscheduled, and now that things are kind of going back to normal, I need to really rejig things here, because you need like even 5 minutes a day, which is nothing. And gosh, if you can't even find 5 minutes a day, that to me would signify a really big problem there. And hence you need to prioritize yourself and literally schedule in time for yourself. And I don't mean forcing it in so that it's another damn thing that you have to do. Oh, great. Now I've got to add self-care to the list. Fine, I'll add it to the list, and I'll sit there and I'll read a book, or I'll do some damn meditation, or I'm just going to eat that packet of Tim Tams, and then I can tick that thing off the list. If you're going in with that attitude, that's not what I mean at all. In fact, if you have that kind of sense when I'm even talking about that, that is screaming to you even more that you need to take this seriously. And there's a great quote out there somewhere in the world about, if you don't have it's something like a certain period of time to meditate. I'm going to say 5 minutes. I actually think it's longer. If you can't find that time, or you don't have that time, then you need to double that time of doing that activity, which just kind of blows your mind really, and kind of goes against everything that you're fighting against or for, because you're like, but that's the whole point, I don't even have time, kind of thing. But now's the time. Now is the time. If you are really caring for everyone and loving everyone in your life, they need you. You might already know this. Of course you would know this, and you might feel this very deeply. And they need you to be well. They need you to be not just hanging by a thread. And they need you to now breathe and start taking care of yourself. No matter how small or how slowly, whatever that looks like, certainly in the beginning when you're like, okay, now I'm like falling apart. So I guess the first step then is to wake up to that, to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that need within yourself, to validate that. Yeah, it's now time for me to take care of myself. I seriously need to do something here for me, just me. I need to be selfish. And I don't mean selfish in a really negative way. Often we kind of think, oh, self-care, isn't that a bit selfish? Yes, it is, for a reason. So that you are able to function in your life, this is your life at the end of the day, and then give to other people. So that your cup, your emotional cup, your physical cup, and spiritual cup is full enough for you to then pour from, to support the other people in your life. Give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to look after yourself. Permission to fall apart a little bit. Permission to not know what to do now. Permission to be confused, to be exhausted, to be really sad and upset. Permission to be really stressed and go, I want out. I need to change something around here. You have to start listening to yourself and acknowledging these realities and accepting that it has been really tough and now you need some help. I think when you're a natural kind of caregiver and you naturally take care of other people, it's so challenging to ask for help, to be on the receiving end and to go, you know what, I need to take your hand now. You please help me now. That can be really scary, can be really humbling. You can be caught up in thoughts of, well, does that mean that I'm weak? Does that mean that I'm failing? Does that mean that I don't have it all together? Maybe. Maybe you don't have it all together. Let me tell you a secret. None of us do. We all look like we do. We're all pretending that we do, but none of us really know what's going on. We're all just pretending to be adults, kind of thing. Asking for help is the opposite of being weak. Asking for help requires enormous courage and strength and bravery to go, I am struggling. Now is my time to fall apart and I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how to support or help myself in that. Challenge yourself in that. Remind yourself that actually it takes a lot of courage to go and get some help, or courage to carve out 5 minutes of your day for you, to literally shut the door in your bedroom or part of your house and put a sign on it that says, do not disturb me, as blunt as that. Or to physically leave the house or physically go somewhere to do something for you. Even if the kid's like, Mom, I need you, or your partner's like, no. Obviously you would want to manage that as best you can. Now, I'm not saying you would abandon your family or anything like that, but I really do mean taking seriously boundaries and saying no to certain things and certain people that perhaps you have actually been saying yes to, particularly during the pandemic. And I think that's fine. That makes a lot of sense, that you may have picked up the slack on a lot of things or started to say yes when otherwise you would have said no. Maybe that has shifted and changed during the pandemic. But now you need to tighten them back up again. That can be extraordinarily difficult for some people who find it really hard to say no, to find it hard to be assertive, to find it really hard to put themselves first. Because when we say yes to other people, and when we do that as a routine thing, we're saying no to ourselves. We need to flip that and find a balance in that. Again, I'm not saying you've got to say no to everything and everyone and too bad, stuff you. Yes, it's all about me now kind of thing. No, I'm being sarcastic there. I mean trying to find a balance and starting to take back some of you and some of your life and some of what's yours. And you need to give yourself permission to do that. You need to acknowledge the importance of doing that. You need to honor that and then physically do it. And like I said, just start small if you need to. Some self-care is better than none. It really is. So even if you've got 5 minutes over 3 days, well, it's better than 0 minutes in 3 days. And you need to work out what really works for you. Like I said, it may not be bubble baths and chocolate cake kind of thing. Who's got that luxury anyway? Gosh, if we could eat chocolate cake every day, sign me up. Probably not chocolate cake, probably like a lemon meringue or a pavlova. Could do that if I wasn't going to gain heaps of weight. But anyway, bubble baths every day, that would be fantastic. But you need to, in all seriousness, work out what works for you. Is it a bath? Is it sitting outside in nature? Is it going for a walk? Is it going hardcore at the gym? Is it doing one of those boxing classes? I can't remember what it's called. Is it gardening? Is it reading? Is it just surfing the net for a while? Man, who cares if that's what works for you? Is it going out for a coffee with friends? Going to a movie? Getting a pedicure or manicure? Is it chilling in your car for a few minutes? Whatever kind of works for you. Is it sleeping? Having a nap? If you've got that luxury to have a nap, have the nap. Do it. The napping and the sleeping and the resting is incredibly important. So that is part of our rest and digest system. And often when we're busy, and we're taking care of everyone else, we're kind of running on cortisol, stress hormone. We might be running on adrenaline. We might be really activating our fight or flight system all the time, burning through that energy all the time. And if we're not replenishing it, of course, how's that going to go? So what we're talking about with adequate rest and self-care is deactivating this fight or flight system and activating the rest and digest system. And that is about more rest, take more time, napping, sleeping more, eating well, gentle kind of calm stuff. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it is meditation, maybe it's some mindfulness stuff. Maybe it's doing art, maybe it's doing craft. Maybe it's going for a drive. Maybe you like going for drives. Again, you need to remember what works for me. Reading a magazine in a coffee shop by yourself. Great. Ordering turmeric latte or something, or just a cappuccino, whatever, or a milkshake, or caramel sundae with the works. Do it. Really, I'm talking about trying to get back in touch with that little child within you as well. So maybe you want to go to the park and sit on a swing. Hey, do that. Do that. Anything that just reconnects you to yourself and just gives you a few moments or more to breathe and to kind of rest a little bit and recenter and ground yourself and acknowledge the enormity of what you have been juggling and trying to manage and holding together. Give yourself a pat on the back. Really, there's no shame in that. It's really important. And I think as women and as caregivers, we're often quite dismissive of what we've been doing and what we've been trying to achieve. We're like, oh, that's okay. Anyone would have done that. It's no biggie. It's a biggie. It was a biggie. This was a doozy of a worldwide event. Huge. The biggest thing for many of us that we've ever encountered. Acknowledge that. That's okay. And go, you know what? Wow, that was huge. And you know what? I did my best through that. I really kept it together for everyone else. I hung in there myself. And now it's my time to just get it together. If you've got any leave up your sleeve, take that leave. Take a mental health day. Take it. That's what it's there for. Take that seriously now. Otherwise, you won't be able to get enough energy back up again or regroup enough when everything else happens in your life. And it's going to happen. That's life. I'm not necessarily saying with the pandemic, heaven forbid that we do, that does get worse again. But just other life stresses going to show up as they do. Woo, yay, kind of thing. So you need to, if now things are easing up a bit for you in terms of physical demands, now is the time for you to step into that space of yourself, with yourself, and take care of yourself. Otherwise we can come across, I was just talking before a little bit about the concept of burnout, and it doesn't have to be in a work sense of burnout. I think burnout can be very common for people in caring roles professionally, nurses, doctors, vets, therapists, dentists, support workers, teachers, childcare educators, anyone who is in the business of taking care of other people. And if you sort of go hard at that for a long time, or you're not able to support yourself or paramedics, police, firefighters, if you're exposed as well to a lot of trauma and a lot of high emotion. And what we've gone through really has been quite a traumatic event. There's been a real threat to our lives and to our well-being, to the people that we know around us. This is not just some sort of airy-fairy world event. This, as you know, is an event that has made many, many, many people sick and has killed many people. Fortunately, here in Australia, we've been very lucky in that regards, and that we haven't had that many people be ill, and very low numbers really of people who have died. But nevertheless, people have died and people have got very sick, and it's been very frightening, particularly if you've got elderly people, or you've got family, or you are immune compromised in some way, and you have just general respiratory issues, and then certainly in the beginning when it was all ramping up, and it was like, is anything safe anymore? Can I even go to the supermarket? Am I exposing myself to something that may affect me, or am I going to bring it home to my children, or am I going to give it to my 90-year-old parent or grandparent? Genuine threats to our survival, really. And that is, to live under that kind of stress and that fear for so long, even though I think that has been relatively well managed, like I've said, here in Australia, there's still been so much uncertainty, and that uncertainty as well is a very known factor for increasing stress and feelings of burnout, because without a kind of known, without the facts and the known stuff, and I know when this is going to end and I know what's happening, this increases like a trauma response in our brains and our bodies, because there's kind of this sense of there's no way out here. And even though now we know that there's a way out and things are changing, there's still no cure, there's still no vaccine. Overseas, and certainly in other states of Australia, we're seeing numbers still climb or come down and then go back up and down and back up. So we're all kind of living right now with this chronic fear and anxiety and chronic stress and chronic unknown, and that just burns through the system. Burnout. So hence the importance of taking time for yourself now, when you can, to sort of remedy the heat of being burned through something, energetically speaking. We need to calm down, we need to cool down, we need to rest and restore ourselves. We need to, like I said, prioritize that, give ourselves permission to do that, re-establish ourselves and our little world and our little, get back to some routines and normality, and have those kind of boundaries. Routines serve a purpose. They help us feel kind of calm and safe and at ease, and with these known factors in our lives. We know every day, we don't actually consciously think about this, but we know every day I'm going to get up and I'm going to have my breakfast, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to do some meditation, or I'm just going to chill with the cats for a while and get up and have my cup of tea or my coffee. And there's this kind of set thing. I'm not going to go through anyone's whole day, but there's a set structure usually to the day. Breakfast and then work or study or chilling or whatever. Somebody comes over. And we certainly know with children, they need to have routine. They need to have a degree of predictability and structure and routine and things that give them a sense of safety and grounding. We don't want that to be too rigid, of course. We need to have some flexibility around that. But that already exists in nature. If we think about the day-night cycle, very, very, very predictable. We know every day that we're alive, the sun's going to get up and the sun's going to go down, and the stars are going to come out, and then the moon, and so it's already happening in nature. And with the seasons, very predictable. Isn't that interesting? And so for us as humans, we thrive on that. So we need to try and get back to a sense of control, essentially, over our worlds and our lives as much as we can, remembering that really there's not a lot we can control in the world, but we can kind of control our actions and what we do with what is happening around us. Okay, so in the same way that we might not be able to control our thoughts that pop up or our feelings, and that's when we would use some tools around mindfulness and just learning to observe what's happening inside of us. We can, though, control our reactions, our responses, our behaviors, what we do with our inner world and our external world. That's where we have some control. And again, we don't want to be too rigid and tight with control around anything, because that can cause many problems the more we try to hold on to stuff. And usually when we are holding on to stuff too tightly, it's because we're scared, we're really anxious, we're freaking out, we're really stressed. So if I just grip onto this, and if I just try to organize it to the dot point, then everything's going to be okay. It doesn't work like that. It's just going to increase your stress levels, and things are not going to go to plan. Things never are perfect. Just chuck that word out the window kind of thing. And you have to kind of ease up around that. And I'm asking you now really to ease up around yourself. Now, when things are kind of calming down, you need to calm down, and you need to calm down your system. If you've been holding everyone else, you need to now hold yourself and or ask for support so that somebody else can hold you. And anyone who's perhaps been a caregiver long term of someone in their family who's ill or elderly or disabled, you might have had that experience. You might know full well what that feeling is like, and how, if you've ever sort of connected with any kind of carer services, they emphasize a lot the need for the carer to have a break, to have respite, to ensure that they're taking care of themselves before they burn out, before they fall in a heap, before they go, I'm completely out. And that's always the risk when we get to that point. It's not just like, I need to just do a bit less here, I need to work less hours, or I need to reschedule things or take things out of the calendar. There's the risk of like, I'm completely out, I'm stopping everything, and we don't want to get to that point. Really, we don't. In terms of that, taking things out of the calendar, do it. If you found, or during the pandemic, if the kids have been at home and really, really at home because they couldn't go to parks, they couldn't do their usual extracurricular activities, sport or music or whatever. Now, on the other side, though, you might be thinking, you know what, do we need to be doing all of those activities? Maybe not, and I think there's such a danger in right now. There's such a, not a danger, that's a bit over dramatic, but there's a tendency, and there's been a tendency I think for many years really, to overschedule our kids, to overschedule us, to overschedule the family. We've got to have them in every class, they've got to have tutoring, they've got to have digital. Kids need free time, they need free play, they need structureless time and space in their day. They've already been at school having to keep it together, keep it together between this time and that time and conform and do this and sit up and do, the same for us. When we go out into the world, we've got to keep it together. We can't just be driving around or rocking up to work in our pajamas, swearing. Maybe you can do that, just going, can't be bothered today, I'm really fed up, that person's such an idiot. We all have to put on our game face when we're out there in the world. And of course, we want to engage with people in a civil way. We want to act with kindness and respect, as much as we can. But we also need the flip side of that, the other side of that, or the end of that is our space and our time to do whatever we want, to wear whatever we want, to not wear whatever we want. And have that same amount of, ideally, time to sort of balance up all that structure that we've been having to operate in. And speaking of structure, the world has been so structured for the last few months now. Many, many rules put into place, and very strict, rigid rules, frankly, that we've had to have. And I'm certainly grateful for that because, as I've said, here in Australia, we've had very low rates of the virus. So, God, when I say that, I feel like I'm in a movie. I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie talking about the virus and how it's taken over the world. And that is so surreal. Acknowledge the craziness of that and the crazy time we're living in right now and the craziness perhaps of your life, how it's just gone so crazy. And you need to kind of de-crazy that in a way. I've just made up a cool new word there. So we need to de-crazy ourselves and really take that seriously. I'm joking about it, but that's kind of what we need to do. Life is about balance. And if we're tipped one way for too long, whether we like it or not, it's going to force the energy or whatever that is in our lives or in the world is going to force it back the other way. And that might be like that metaphor that I was using before about holding the ball underwater. It's not just gently going to float up. If it's been forced that way, it's going to go boom. It's going to swing right back the other way. This is where we have some choice and control in the middle there. It doesn't have to be so brutal and so severe and so explosive and potentially damaging to ourselves. If we can go, okay, now's the time for me to breathe and take some time for myself and literally just get in there with some self-care every day and literally put that in my calendar and literally shut that door and literally put that boundary in place. Don't care what people think. And I'm going to have to manage the feelings that come up with that. I might feel guilty doing that or really selfish. Other people might want to have a go at me for doing that. You're going to have to manage those feelings that come up in you for the sake of your own well-being and acknowledging the enormity of what you've been doing. So there is some choice in between these two extremes of, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I feel like I'm about to step off that cliff. I'm about to fall off that cliff. I don't want to fall. My family don't want me to fall. So what do I do? What do I need to do so that I just take a few steps back from the cliff and go, right, I need to make sure I'm safe here. I need to make sure I'm taking care of some of my basic core needs. Remember them: sleep, basic good nutrition, rest, some play, enjoyment of life, reconnection to other people. Really, really simple things. Hanging out in nature. I personally love that. I know many, many people in my life the nature thing is real. You've got to get out there and feel that connection again and that groundedness again, and remember there's so much more to life than big pandemics or the little bubble that you've been in for a few weeks or a few months. And just breathe. Even just talking about that, I'm like, I just have this urge to have a big deep breath. Maybe getting up in the morning, watching the sunrise or watching the sunset. Hell, even take your kids with you and go, look at the beautiful sky. Even if they're like, this is boring, I don't care. I think it's really good for kids to see beauty in nature like that, and that kind of trains them to be trained. That sounds horrible, but you're teaching them, that's a better word, to notice the world around them and to notice the beauty and to reconnect to that, and how simple that is. Very, very, very simple strategy there. Just get outside, put your feet on some grass or in some sand, breathe in some fresh air, stand under a tree, touch the leaves, lean on the tree trunk, touch the tree trunk. I do this. I'm legit a tree hugger. I love that stuff. I swear it does something to my soul. It does something to all of us. So these little simple strategies work. They help, even if they're just tiny. You just put a little brick on a little brick, and eventually you'll have a wall. You'll have something more solid that you have built for yourself in terms of taking care of yourself, looking after some of your needs. You have to look after your needs so that you can take care of other people's needs around you, and now's the time to do it. Now, is there anything else I want to say about that before me just rabbiting on, before I potentially just keep rabbiting on about that? No, I think that's about it. I've kind of covered the gist of what I wanted to emphasize. And I really, really, really do honestly encourage you to look at things now that we're on the other side of the fence, sort of. Maybe we've climbed up the fence a little bit. We're on a ladder on the fence to the other side of the pandemic in Australia, in Western Australia, sort of, And really assess your life in the last few months and assess, have you been shouldering even more of that load than you normally would? Have you been holding everything and everyone even more than you were? Have you been juggling even more balls than you already were? What is that looking like now? And what do you need to do to remedy that, to bring balance back to that, to restore yourself in some way, to replenish, to nourish, to renew? All these things has to happen, You need to validate that within yourself and within your girlfriends. Maybe a bunch of you, might be in a mother's group, or little, you might know other mums through the school that your children attend to, or different schools. Really leaning on each other now. If you've got good connections and you trust them and you're honest with each other, and you can say, oh my God, now I just need to breathe a bit. I really want to go on that big holiday, but I still can't, kind of thing. But acknowledging that and using some healthy kind of tools and strategies to take care of yourself now, and to restore yourself primarily, so that you can make it to the end of the year. I know for me, and I know for many of us actually here at the service, and many people in the wider community, we feel like it's the end of the year. This year has been so intense, it really has, that we have some of that feeling of like fatigue that kind of comes at the end of the year, when you're like, yeah, wow, I'm due for that break. I'm due for Christmas and summer, and but we're like, it's only the 1st of July. Like, what? We've got 6 months to go. But that to me just sums up the enormity of what's been happening and what is in the last 6 months. Starting January, we were just getting sort of trickles through of what was happening overseas and stuff like that. And certainly by March, things were just crazy here. Crazy and scary. And don't forget that kind of fear state that we were in. And remember, I talked about that's almost like a trauma response in us. And it's really, really important to sort of undo that and work with that in the brain and in the body for you, not just within your family, to kind of assimilate and integrate what's been happening, and to come out the other side in an okay state. There's no point coming out the other side if you're just an absolute wreck. That's just going to take more time for you to get back to a healthy kind of state. If that's the way it is, that's the way it is. That's just a sign you're going to need to take more time and more intensely take care of yourself before you can certainly think about taking care of other people. On that note, I am going to wrap it up here. I've been talking for nearly an hour. I hope it's been useful for someone out there who may resonate with what I've been talking about, the huge load that many mothers, many women, many caregivers have been under the last few months, and now you just want to fall apart. Really seriously look after yourself. Take that time for yourself. If you need extra support, of course, we're always here. We do a lot of counselling services here. We do some group programs. You can contact us via our phone, 9490-2258. Our website, whws.org.au. You can send a message through the website, or you can email us on info@whws.org.au. And of course, you can always message us through or contact us through our Facebook page, which you've probably already found if you are watching this. And remember what I said about not being afraid to ask for help, and the courage and the bravery it takes to do that, and the importance of doing that as well. Reach out if you need extra support to find your balance and to restore yourself, and to acknowledge what you've been going through in the last few months. Okay, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions on this topic, or any just comments that you'd like to make, or if you have any other ideas on what else I can live stream on, being a psychologist, I usually cover topics to do with sort of mental health and well-being. By all means, hit us up and offer some suggestions, and I can live stream about that too. It'd be great to have more interaction. Love to have a little bit of a chat with you while I'm talking online, see if I can answer any of your questions. But otherwise, I will see you next week for another live stream. I'm still just trying to lock down that topic, but I will get to that. Otherwise, Friday is our live stream by Janet, our Health Promotion Officer. Take care. Bye.